Baruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Lamed Gimel Amud Beis, 5 lines from the bottom. After the Gemara had recounted the episode of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son Rabbi Elazar, who escaped the decree of the Romans and hid in the cave for 13 years until finally the decree was nullified, Rabbi Shimon says it's time to make tikkunim, just like my forefather Yaakov Avinu, when he escaped from the clutches, the hands of Esav HaRasha, he also was making tikkunim. Says the Gemara to explain, Omar Hoyel v'israchish nisa, Ezel isakin milso. Since a miracle took place and I was able to escape from the Roman decree, I will go ahead and make tikkunim. Dirshu, it says, by Yaakov Avinu, Vayavo Yaakov Sholem. And Yaakov came to the city Sholem. Explains the Gemara, V'omar Rav Sholem begufoi. Sholem b'mamoinoi and Sholem b'tairosoi. He was Sholem in his goof. He no longer had a limp. He was healed from his limp. Sholem b'mamoinoi, all of the doiron, the gifts that he had to give to Esav to try to appease him, it was all forgiven and he was given back to Yaakov. And Shalom b'Tairosoi, he didn't lose any of his learning from the fact that he was in the house of Lavan for all of those years. Vayichan es pnei ha'ir. And therefore it says in the Pasuk, even though it mentioned before that Yaakov entered the city, now it says Vayichan es pnei ha'ir. And he encamped in front of the city. Mashma, that he didn't enter the city. Therefore the Gemara said Drasha. Vayichan from Lashon Chen. He made tikkunim, graciousness. Omarav matbeya tikkun lahem. He made a matbeya, coinage for the city. And therefore they had their own chashivus, as their own malchus, not having to use other people's coinage. Ushmul amar shvakin tikkun lahem. The tikkun that he made al pnei ha'ir was the tikkun of shvakim, of all types of marketplaces. Rabbi Yochanan Omar marchtzois tikkun lahem. The chain that he made for the city al pnei ha'ir was the marchartzois, bathhouses. Omar, therefore, says Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Ika milsa the boy letikune. Is there a matter that requires tikkun? Omrulei, they said to him, Ika duchta di isbe safek tuma. There's a place that has doubtful tuma. And as a result, the Kaihanim have to go and circumvent this area. And therefore it's a big tircha for the Kaihanim. So it needs tikkun. Omar, he said, Ika inish, the yadid the ischazek, hacha, tahara. Is there a person who was here once upon a time that knows that indeed that this area had tahara? In other words, that it wasn't a beis hakvaros. Omar lei, Hahusaba kan kitzetz ben Zakai turmosi truma. He testifies that Ben Zakai, referring to Reb Yochanan ben Zakai, he used to take the seeds of a tirmuse and he would plant them, which were truma, and therefore not only was he himself a kohen who had to be careful from truma, but also he had to make sure that the truma itself remained tahor. So at that point in time, for sure, that area was tahor. Only subsequently, there was known to be somebody who had passed away and was buried there, but it's not a beis hakvaros. Avad ihu nami hachi. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai did the same thing. He also took the seeds of termosi and he then seeded them in that area. Says the Gemara, Kol heicha dahava koshi tahare. So what happened was when he seeded the termosi in that area, so miraculously the dead body started moving in the ground, causing above where he was situated to be soft ground. So it says over here that where it was hard, then he knew it was tahare, it was tahor, he made it tahor. That area was tahor. However, where it was soft, then he made a mark indicating that place over there is where the dead body would lie, and therefore that was tameh. Allowing therefore the kohanim to then circumvent the whole area, just not going over where the tameh area is. Says the Gemara, Omar Hahu Saba, Tier ben Yochai Beis HaKvaros. he then says to Rav Shimon Yochai, did you therefore metire a beis hakvaros, criticizing him for what he did? Omar le ilmali lo hayisi imanu. If it was not for the fact that you were not with us when we discussed this in the first place, va'afilu hayisa imanu v'lo nimnis imanu, and even if you were with us, but you weren't counted with us, that means that you didn't then see what had happened, then yafa ta'amer, then it would be fine what you said. However, achshav shahiyisa imanu, but now that you were with us in the beginning, v'nimnes imanu, and you even agreed and gave your support for what I was about to do, yoimru zoinois mefarkesoi zu et zu, people that say zoinois, harlots, they do each other's hair, making braids for each other because each one wants to look beautiful, so then each one does it for the other one, even though they hate each other. They're in competition with one another. Talmidei Chachamim lo kol shekain, then certainly Talmidei Chachamim should be looked upon as helping one another and not hurting the other one, which would be then a chilul hatar and chilul Hashem. Yohiv be'eino v'nach nafshei. Rav Shimon Bar Yochai put his eyes on this Saba, and he died. Nofak l'shuka Chazia Yehuda ben Gerim. He went out to the shuk, to the marketplace, and he saw that there was a person, Yehuda ben Gerim. Omar, he said, Adayin yesh lezeh ba'olam. Yehuda ben Gerim still is alive. Nosan bo einov v'aso gal shel atzomois. He peered at Yehuda ben Gera, and when he gazed at him, he made him into a pile of bones as a result of the slander, even though it was not direct, that he was guilty of. The Gemara now brings a new Mishnah in regard to the preparations before Shabbos. A person is obligated to then warn his wife, to ask her of various questions in regard to that preparation. Says the Mishnah, there are three things that a person must ask his wife before Shabbos, and they are as follows. Eisartem? Did you take Meiser? Eravtem? Did you make Eruvim? Hadliku es haner. The first two are questions because he doesn't know whether Meiser was taken out. He doesn't know whether an Eruv was done. However, Hadliku es haner is not a question. He can see whether the ner was lit or not. Let's go back and explain. Isartem, when a person has peiros that grew in Eretz Yisrael, so they're chayiv in Trumas and Meisers. And therefore, if he does not take out Trumas and Meisers from those peiros, they're tevil. And he's not able to then eat those peiros. On Shabbos, if he wants to eat peiros, he has to make sure that the peiros are meisered. Now, if he had peiros, that we're talking about peiros over here, that let's say during the week, they are not necessary to meiser, because we're talking about peiros where he took them from the field, he already then detached them from the ground, and he was on his way to take them to his own home. He didn't get a chance, yes, to take them from their home. That fruit is considered to be an achilas arai. It would not be chayiv in meiser. However, on Shabbos, since al achila has the din of oineg, since it says in the pasuk v'karasa Shabbos oineg, that means that their eating on Shabbos makes even achilas arai during the week to be an achilas keva, whereby even though it's not chayiv in meiser during the week, but on Shabbos it is yes chayiv in meiser. So we're talking about that type of peiros where during the week it was not chayiv, but on Shabbos it is. He asked his wife, did you take meiser from those peiros? Now we're not discussing, however, peiros that are chayiv in meiser even during the week, because we have a chazaka that a chaver doesn't keep such peiros around in his house. He immediately meisers them. So therefore we're not talking about those type of peiros. We're talking about the peiros that are not chayiv in meiser during the week, but on Shabbos they are. So he asked his wife, Isartem, did you take out meiser, the appropriate meiser, so we can eat them on Shabbos? Now why can't you take out meiser on Shabbos? Because meiser is a form of a tikkun, a fixing up, since it now allows you to eat those peiros on Shabbos, which is doime, it's similar to Tikkun Kli, which is a Tikkun that is also min HaTorah. So Chacham made a gezer, you can't take Meiser on Shabbos. A Ravtem, he asked his wife, did you take Eruv? Now Eruv refers to two different things over here. Either Eruv Techumin, where a person, let's say, is in a city, from the outskirts of the city, let's say from the wall of that city, 2,000 amos is how far he can walk. That's called the Tchum on Shabbos or on Yontif. So over here on Shabbos, we're saying that if a person wants to extend the amount of distance, he can go ahead and, where he's shoyves, he can be koine Shabbos, and be koine the Shabbos where he is putting an eruv. So if he wants to put an eruv 2,000 amos up to 2,000 amos away from, let's say, where his dwelling initially was in the city, then he can have an extended 2,000 amos there. And that's called an eruv techumin. There's also something called eruv chatzeros, where a person typically lived in a bayis, and many batim shared one chotzer. So in order to allow people to walk between a bayis and a chotzer by carrying, or between the bayis and the bayis, they needed to make an eruv. The way they would do that would they would take one kikar lechem, one loaf of bread from each bayis, and they would put it into one of the batim, and that would then combine all of the houses together with that chotzer, whereby each one can then carry from his bayis to another bayis, or from his bayis to the chotzer, or vice versa. So he asks his wife, did you do this before Shabbos? Because this again would be a tikkun on Shabbos that cannot be done. And again, since it's similar to a tikkun kli, which is an iser d'oraisa, the Chacham made an iser d'rabbanon of making a tikkun that's doime to that, called an eruv. And then he says, halikos haner, if he sees that the neiros were not yet lit before Shabbos. Mishnah continues, Safek chashecha, Safek eina chashecha. If it's a doubtful time, what we call bein hashmashos, between the shkia and the tzeis hakoychovim, which is Safek yom and Safek laila, it says over here, ein ma'asrin es havadai. One cannot take ma'asir from vadai, from vaida, things that need ma'asir to be taken out of. Ve'ein madbilim es hakelim, and they cannot also take matbil, a kli that is tamei, to metire the kli. Ve'ein malikin es haneros. Here it's obvious that you can't malik the neros because that's an iser d'oraisa, and therefore the Mefarshim explain it's zu ve'ein tzarich loymar zu ketani. That means that not only right these things, but this you also didn't have to teach. Certainly you would not be able to light the neros on bein hashmoshos. However, you could ma'asir demai. Demai is safek tevua, whether it was ma'asir or not. In the hands of an am haaretz, it was suspected that maybe ma'asir was not taken out, even though min hatara, we say that it already had trumas and ma'asers taken out. That the rabbanon were suspicious of an am haaretz, and therefore they said that his tevua, we have to be machmer and take out the meiser from his tevua, so that can be done during ben hashmoshois. Uma'arvin v'toimnin es hachamin, and you can make eruv and can also insulate on ben hashmoshois. More will explain. Be'ezer Hashem. Says the Gemara, asking the following question in regards to one of the things that one must ask his wife, or at least then determine whether the lights were lit, and he sees that they weren't, then he should then tell her haliku es haner. Ask the Gemara, Minohani mili, from where do we know these words? What is the source of lighting Neiros on Shabbos? Now we already found that the fact that it says V'karasa oineg Shabbos, that oineg includes also enjoying the Shabbos at the Seuda, which requires also Neiros to be lit, to be able to see your food and enjoy it. We also saw some Mefarshim explain that kavod Shabbos is required, and therefore having the Neiros lit is a kavod for the Shabbos. Now the Gemara says another source. Omar Yoshua ben Levi Omar Kro v'yodata ki sholem ohalecho, and you shall know that shalom is in your tent, upokadata novecho or novcha, and you shall visit your neve, your abode, v'lo sechta, and it shall not be amiss. Now, the Gemara Darshans is saying over here the following drush in these words. V'yodato, in regard to the Nero Shabbos, you will know by seeing ki shalom alecha, that there is shalom in your household. Ufokarta, and if you don't see the light being lit, then you shall command novecha, referring to the boat, meaning your wife, v'lo secheto, and you shall not sin. So therefore, this is the inyan of Shalom Bayis, why we light Neros. And we saw in Daf Chav Gimel Amud Beis that Ner Beisoy and Ner Chanukah. And if a person only had enough oil to light either the Ner of Chanukah or the Ner Beisoy, referring to the Ner Shabbos, the Gemara says that Ner Shabbos takes precedent. Even though it's true, Ner Chanukah is Pirsume Nisa, as great as it is, but nonetheless, Ner Shabbos takes precedent because of Shalom Beisoy. Because if the house is dark, then a person will then be bumping into the walls and the furniture, and there will be a distress in the home. And therefore, the third reason, aside from Oneg Shabbos and Kavod Shabbos, is Shalom Beisoy, which is an ikar reason why we're lighting the Neiros for Shabbos. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Bar Rav Huna, Afaga da Amar Rabban Shloishe Dvarim Tzorech Odam Loimar V'chulei. Even though the Chachamim say in our Mishnah that we must say to our wives these three things, Tzorech lememrenu benichuso, they must be said with nachas, ki heichad likablinhu minei, so that they will be accepted. Erev Shabbos is a very busy time with a lot of stress and turmoil, and therefore a person has to then give these instructions to his wife and ask these questions with nichuso, with nachas, so that will be a positive response, and she'll mikabel his words. Omer of Ashi, ano lo shmiya li, I didn't hear this teaching. Ha de Rabba bar Rav Huna, that Rabba Rav Huna said, v'kiyamti misvar, and I still fulfilled it with my own svar, my own logic. I understood that people, in order to then hear something and accept it, they have to be told in a way of nachas. And therefore, especially on Erev Shabbos, again, when it's busy and there's a lot of hustle and bustle, this is the time to create an atmosphere of shalom, and therefore to say these requests with nachas. Says the Gemara, Hagufa Kashya, Amrish loishe dvarim tzarech adam lomar b'tzarech beisoy Erev Shabbos im chashecha. You just said that there are three things a person must say to his wife on Erev Shabbos samuch l'chashecha, right before Shabbos. Im chashecha in, when it's just before Shabbos, yes. But safek chashecha, safek eina chashecha loy. But if it's already been a shmoshos after the shkia, not. V'hodar tani safek chashecha, safek eina chashecha ma'arev. And yet it says one of these things that when it's been a shmoshos, safek chashecha, safek eina chashecha, then you can be ma'arev. So it seems to be in contradiction. You are required to then do the eruv before the Ben Hashmoshos, Samuch l'Shabbos, or can you do it during the Ben Hashmoshos? The Gemara interrupts briefly by giving a siman of the following statements that were made in the name of Rabbi Abba Amar Rav Chia Bar Ashi in the name of Rav. It says the first one is Begufu, which is really our inyan, and then it says other places in the Hemshech of Masechet Shabbos, Zimra, Tzifra, Bechavla, and the Milsa. So with the first siman, Nogea to us is Amar Rabbi Abba, Amar Rav Chia Bar Ashi Amar Rav. He says Lo Kashya. This is not a contradiction that we mentioned that you are to ask your wife if she made Eruvin before Shabbos, and yet it says that Ben Hashmashos one can then make an Eruv. Not a contradiction. Why? Kan be'eruve techumin, kan be'eruve chatzeros. That in regards to the first Eruv mentioned that is samuch the Shabbos, before the Shkia, that is being asked by his wife, did you make Eruv referring to the Techumim? Now we said also when we explained the Mishnah, it's referring to Eruv Chatzeros, but it's really Agav, the Eruv Techumim. That main Eruv that we're concerned about is making sure that indeed Eruv Techumim was made before Shabbos. V'omar Rave, and Rava said, Amru lo shnayim, in regards to Eruv Techumim, when two people said to him, Tzei va'arev aleinu, go out and make for us an eruv. La'echad irov alav mi ba'od yom. To one he made an eruv before the Shabbos, before the Shkia. Ula'acher eruv alav ben hashmashos. Whereas the other one he made an eruv techumin only during ben hashmashos. Zeh she'irov alav mi ba'od yom nechal eruv ben hashmashos. The one who made the eruv for him on mi ba'od yom before the Shabbos, then his eruv was eaten subsequently on ben hashmashos. That's what happened. V'zeh she'irov alav ben hashmashos, and the one who made the eruv ben hashmashos nechal eruv ben chashecha. The eruv happened to be eaten only after chashecha, after nightfall. Says the Gemara, Shneim kanu eruv. They both have a valid eruv to chumin. Monavshach, whichever way you would like. I ben hashmashos yemamahu. If you call ben hashmashos safek yomi to be designated as day, basra likni, kamala likni. The latter case would be koine. The first case would not be koine, because the latter case is talking about when he made the eruv ben hashmashos and it was eaten after nightfall. If you say ben hashmashos was during the day, then he made the eruv in the entrance before Shabbos entered, and he was koine the shvisa, he was koine the eruv. And the first case he would not be, because the first case is talking about where he made the eruv mi ba'od yom, and he was nechal, the eruv was nechal during ben hashmashos, which would be considered during the day also, and that would not be good. V'i ben hashmashos leil yahu. On the other hand, if you say ben hashmashos is considered to be night, then kamo likni, basar lo likni. The first case, when he made the eruv mi ba'od yom and he ate it ben hashmashos, that would be very good, because ben hashmashos is considered to be night according to this, and therefore he was koine the eruv. Whereas in the basar, the latter case, when he made the eruv during the ben hashmashos and he ate it and it was eaten after nightfall, so then that ben hashmashos was considered to be at night, and therefore he wasn't koine the eruv. Says the Gemara, ben hashmashos sveiku, and since ben hashmashos is safek yom safek laila, v'sveika derabban lekula, and that which you're talking about erev techumin, we're going with the opinion that it's derabban, and the Chachamim say it's derabbanan, therefore we go lekula. And since we don't know whether, again, the time ben hashmashos is yom or laila, and since over here we're dealing with a dirabbanan, therefore sveika dirabbanan lekula, and therefore both of them are koine eruv.